So the other day I was looking up information on the new TV series Houdini and Doyle, which I thought was a pretty interesting series. It may not be historically accurate, but makes anyone watching it not only curious about what really happened to these historical figures that are featured on the show, but also curious about which characters from history will be brought on to the show. In the comments section below, if you so choose, you may discuss which historical figures you think would be interesting to see on this TV series or on their own TV series. That being said, while I was watching Houdini and Doyle, I saw a commercial for a new TV series, Lethal Weapon, which I thought was kind of interesting considering that we've already seen a few TV shows based on movies come out. I believe Nickelodeon has been running School of Rock. We've already seen a really good interpretation of Rush Hour, and I saw a rather shabby variant of Uncle Buck recently as well. And it seems like this is sort of going to be a thing. A lot of new TV shows are being based on movies, especially old movies that came out a long time ago. In the case of Uncle Buck, I feel that it's going in the wrong direction. While I don't recall everything about the movie Uncle Buck personally, I do feel that this was a character that could only be played by John Candy, and nobody else really has John Candy's charm and charisma, and therefore this really isn't going to work. In the case of School of Rock, I never paid attention to the movie, therefore I never paid attention to the series, and I didn't catch on back then that they were doing a show based on a movie. I thought they were doing a show that ripped off a movie's title. I didn't get it back then. In the case of Rush Hour, they pretty much taught the chemistry between the two characters from the Rush Hour movie series. I feel like I'm watching a series based on the movie. I feel like I'm watching the Rush Hour movies. So I feel like they're doing a pretty good job at capturing these two characters and the buddy cop chemistry that they had going on. And I feel like it's an accurate representation of what the movie series was. It could stand to use a little more action, but I think it's overall well balanced. But then on the internet, after I saw the advertisement for Lethal Weapon, which I know nothing about, but it looks like they're playing up some kind of action comedy thing, because I never saw the movie series, so I don't know what the TV series should be about. I got curious to look up other TV shows in 2016 that were based on movies to try and figure out just how many of these movies there should be. And I came across some interesting results. I'd like to go over these and say some of my thoughts on this. Now, movies I don't know about I'm going to skip, so I'm just going to say the ones that I do know. The first one that caught my interest was the TV series based on the movie Big, which is where Tom Hanks, in one of his first roles, plays a kid who wished he was an adult and gets turned into an adult, and he works at a toy store. It's very grounded in 80s culture and what was popular in the 80s, and when you watch the movie now, you feel like you're watching a time capsule of everything that was huge in the 80s. It's got the fortune-telling machines, it's got the Cave of the Word Wizard, it's got laser tag, it's got F.O.A. Schwartz. There's so much 80s stuff in the movie Big, and it really speaks to what the 80s was doing. But I think it could be interesting to take this same premise and rework it, as the general plot could be done at any time in the history of the world. Because all you have to do is take a kid, turn them into an adult who acts like a kid still, and who gets a job at a toy store and helps the toy store research and market toys, and he learns things as he goes along. It doesn't necessarily have to be an 80s setting per se, and I think the idea could work out at least for 1 or 2 seasons of a TV series. If the idea keeps going on too long, it's not as interesting because you have to have that resolution at the end of the series where the kid turned into an adult eventually turns back into the kid, or comes to some other terms with what's happened to him. You eventually have to have an ending to the story, and it doesn't make for a very long TV series, but it could definitely do a lot of interesting stuff and a lot of things involving either product placement or parodies of products that are popular. That'll do for Chance of Meatballs. I already knew was being made into a series, and I have no idea how this is going to work. The idea worked good as one movie, and anything beyond that really doesn't impress me. The more interesting thing that I'm looking forward to that is not listed on the list that I looked up is that Hotel Transylvania will also be a series. I think Hotel Transylvania has the potential to work if done just right. If you do it as a story moving forward in the movie series, then it could tell lots of interesting stories. It would be a lot more interesting than what the Monsters High doll series does with its TV show movies, and it could show people how a concept like this is supposed to be done properly. If they decide to go and do this as a prequel and do it before the first movie came out, then they have to avoid ruining the continuity of the movie and the sequel after it. If they step all over continuity and ruin the characters, then the movies won't make sense. But if they keep the story moving forward, they could go in an interesting direction with it. Sony Pictures also has plans for a few other series based on some of their other shows. One that's coming out that I also heard about is a new Ghostbusters series, which could be good or bad based on how the movie does. And considering real Ghostbusters versus extreme Ghostbusters, it could still be good or bad in either direction depending on how things play out. The next one is of a movie that I know well enough to talk about it is Frequency. And this was an interesting idea. A guy has a radio that can communicate with his father in the past, and he can make changes to the timeline by sending messages back and forth over the radio, and those changes can have immediate consequences. It'd be interesting to see how a person alters history by sending messages over the radio waves, and how many different ways this frequency can come and go, allowing him to gain and lose contact with different points throughout history, or at least throughout his father's history, and how we can see the butterfly effect of things rippling throughout time affecting stuff, and how stuff can get messed up and how it has to be put right by the end of the episode. This is an idea that I felt could have gone on for more movies, and they never did anything with it, and I'd be interested to see how this series plays out, especially if it's done right. Friday the 13th is an interesting entry on the 2016 list, because Friday the 13th was already a TV series, and I don't know how you can make Friday the 13th a TV series now when it was already a TV series in the past, and what you can do with the new Friday the 13th that was different from the last one. But if you can reboot Teen Wolf and a whole bunch of other TV shows, you can reboot anything. In the case of Ghost as a TV series, I don't know how they're going to pull that off. That movie had a beginning, middle, and end, and when it ended, it told the entire story. Maybe you could have a series revolving around people who can talk to ghosts, or see ghosts, but I can't imagine stretching out the plot of Ghost for the main characters over the course of the entire TV series, especially not over multiple seasons. The next one that I recognize is Marley and Me. That could be an interesting comedy about people and their dog. You know how the movie ends, but they have the dog's entire life to tell stories. And if you get a puppy and the puppy ages, you can always replace it with an identical breed. But it would be interesting to see the main character of the story, the dog, grow up and age over the course of the series. The next series that we have is Problem Child, which is interesting because it was already a series previously, and now that series is long over, the movies are long over, and I don't know how they'll continue this story. I hope they work in some of Problem Child 2's canon, because Problem Child was best as Problem Child 2, and a little bit of the series, but after the series and after the third movie and so on, they forgot the canon of Problem Child 2, and that's what made the series really interesting. To show the characters evolving and adding new cast members, rather than playing this one-note joke forever. It's a story that's best told when the characters get to evolve, rather than being constantly stuck in that one-note position. Truman Show is an interesting idea for telling a story, because I've always wondered what Truman did on his TV series as he grew up and as people watched him and what kinds of things happened to him. I've also always wondered what happened to Truman after he left the studio and was learning what the true real life outside the studio was like. It'd be interesting to see either story play out. And that's it for the list that I found on the internet for 2016 and movies based on TV shows. What they'll come out on, how many of those will be on TV, and how many of them will be online, whether they'll be successful or not, it's all stuff that we have yet to find out. But those are my thoughts based on the ones that were familiar to me. There's a lot of movies, over 33 in fact, that are on the list, but a lot are movies I can't give opinions on because I never saw the movies that the TV shows were based on. So leave your comments in the section below. Tell us about anything that I left off the list that you may have heard of also. Thank you for watching, and good night.